Department of Statistics, St. Thomas College, Thrissur, blissfully invite one and all here for 2-day national webinar on research methodology, specifically reference to social science and medical science. St. Thomas College, Thrissur is one of the leading academic institutions in higher education sector of Kerala since 1990. The Department of Statistics was established in the year 1984 and MSc course in Statistics was commenced in the same year. Department was elevated as Research Center of Calicut University in the year 2013. Let us begin the formal session by evoking the presence of God Almighty. For that, I invite Namita Joseph, final year MSc Statistics. Over to you, Namita.
There shall be flowers of blessings. This is the promise of love. There shall be seasons refreshing, sent from the Savior above. Showers of blessing we need. Mercy drops round us are falling, but for the showers we plead. Mercy drops round us are falling, but for the showers we plead.
Thank you, Namita, for the soothing prayer. To welcome is to show honor. To welcome is to show integrity. I invite Dr. V.M. Chako, the Dean of Research and Head of the Department of Statistics, to welcome the gathering. Over to you, Chako, sir.
Thank you, Sri. Good evening, all. As we have seen, our 2-day webinar on research methodology with a special reference to social science and medical science is going to start. Respected Principal Dr. Martin K. and respected resource persons Dr. T.H. Ansar and Dr. Anil C. Matthew, and respected coordinators of the program Dr. T.S. Ajesh, Dr. Gina Joseph and Mr. Rasin R.S. And dear faculty members, research scholars, and dear students and participants from other institutions. As the name mentioned, the name of the seminar is nothing but research methodology, webinar on research methodology. As we all know, statistics, we have to use statistics in all discipline to conduct a good research. So all who are doing research, all who are conducting projects have to understand the methodology of research. So that is based on statistics that we know very well. In central government, we have Ministry of Statistical Planning and Program Implementation. So under that ministry, there are 2 divisions, NSSO and CSO. So that ministry conducts census operations, various type of surveys and various type of studies, and they are using statistical tools. So their tools and techniques are mainly based on statistics. And in Kerala, when we look at statewide, in Kerala we have Department of Economics and Statistics. They are also doing similar type of studies, research projects, and census, sampling operations, etc. So they are preparing questionnaires, they are conducting surveys, they are taking the data, they are analyzing the data and interpreting and submitting to the policy makers. So statistics, we have to understand statistics in detail to become a part of this type of projects and this type of research activities. Other than this government sector, we have use of statistics in medical research and scientific, social science research, etc. We all are doing statistical analysis for preparation of PhDs in social science theses and medical science theses. So in this context, being a statistician or being a statistics student, we need to understand the methodology of conducting statistical studies, that is research methodology, in detail. So we have good experts in that areas, especially in medical, social science and medical science. From medical science we have Dr. Anil C. Matthew, and from social science we have Dr. T.H. Ansar. When we look at the WHO website, we can see that there are plenty of COVID related data and their analysis, they are displayed in their website. So we can see that the use of statistics in all fields, not only in statistics but also in all other disciplines, we can see the use of statistics. Definitely, I think this 2-day seminar will be helpful for the students, research scholars and faculty members to understand the methodology, research methodology. So my duty is to welcome all the dignitaries and participants assembled here. Our principle is the motivation for conducting this type of webinars for the benefit of students and teachers. So we have invited him, and he has with us, and on behalf of Department of Statistics and Research Center, Department of Research Center and Department of Statistics, I welcome Dr. Martin K., Principal of St. Thomas College, for this webinar. Welcome, Martin, first. And as you know, as I mentioned, we have two resource persons. Today we have with us Dr. Anil C. Matthew. He is the professor in Biostatistics, Department of Community Medicine, PSG Institute of Medical Sciences and Research, Coimbatore. So in detail, you can you will get more information from one other student about him, and I am not telling more. So on behalf of Department of Statistics and the Research Center, I welcome Anil C. Matthew sir for this webinar. And as we know, the coordinators of the program, Dr. T.S. Ajesh, organized this webinar for the benefit of students, and along with him, Dr. Gina Joseph and Rosin Aras has supported him. And on behalf of this Department of Statistics and Research Center, I welcome them also. Welcome, sir. And with our invitation, we have participants from various institutions, including faculty members and research scholars and PG students, degree students. On behalf of Department of Statistics, I welcome all the participants for this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chaku sir. Now, I would like to invite Reverend Dr. Martin K.A., Principal, St. Thomas College, Thrissur, for the principal address. Over to you, Father.
Good evening to one and all. Dr. Anil C. Matthew, Professor of Biostatistics, PSG Institute of Medical Sciences and Research, Coimbatore. Dr. Chakoviyam Gechodi, and Dean of Research. Dr. Sajesh T.A., Dr. Gina Joseph, Assistant Professor Rosin Aras, the coordinators, dear delegates, faculty members, dear students. Data is becoming all the more important these days, and hence comes the relevance and importance of statistics. All the more the branch of statistics is getting more and more relevance in the present world scenario. In the last research scholars meet, where I was listening to Dr. P.G. Shankaran, the Vice Chancellor of CUSAT, I was very much impressed by his analysis of or the application of statistics with literature, English literature, the probability of a walk being attributed to Shakespeare. And he has presented very well that a work of art, a poem, anonymously written, and how much it can be attributed to Shakespeare by analyzing the data and the words used in it, and the words Shakespeare used to use. And with like that, he has analyzed so beautifully, and he has said that all the more the statistics is being applied to every realm of life. So here we have a biostatistician, Dr. Anil C. Matthew, and the topic is very much interesting. So thus we have 2-day sessions, and I'm so glad that the Department of Statistics has organized such a wonderful program. As a principal, I'm so glad that you have selected two vibrant resource persons, Dr. Anil C. Matthew as well as Dr. T.H. Ansar. Hope that we will have wonderful sessions ahead. Wishing you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Father. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. The world is full of diamonds and gems, and we are having some of them here today to build this event. With this note, I would like to invite Dr. Anil C. Matthew, Professor of Biostatistics at PhD Institute of Medical Science and Research. He is a well-known resource person at Medical Science and Research. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. May start the session, sir?
Yes. Please start, sir.
Yeah. It is a great pleasure to associate with you in this today's evening time in this important webinar. And thank you, Principal and Chako sir and Rasim sir and all the teams for inviting me to give this talk. Actually, the St. Thomas College, Thrissur, if I am correct, some 7 years or 8 years back, I came there once as an examiner, and I was there for 5 days. I remembering all those days, those days I'm still remembering. This particular talk is totally a different talk. The title itself, if you look into it, Biostatistics, a Retrospective Study. As mainly many social science students and it is a motivation for young statisticians and research scholars who like to take their career in the field of medical research. So the slides are addressed like that way. But the slides do not have much depth of the statistics part. As different specialties are attending the workshop, I don't want to give more formulas and complicated formulas and other things are not there. But what I am addressing is how the subject emerged a long time ago, a retrospective study, that means tracing back its history, how the application of statistics in the field of medicine and public health came into the picture. Just giving you an awareness and some of its applications in the field of medical research, so that it will be a motivation for the research scholars to take part their career as statistician in the field of medicine and the public health. So when you work as a biostatistician in a medical college, the major responsibilities of you include: one is give an appropriate study design. For example, physicians may have wanted to conduct some studies, and it is the responsibility of the statistician to give a proper study design. And it is also the responsibility of the statistician to decide the sample size. How many people we have to study it? For example, a country like India, maternal mortality ratio is a major problem. Suppose if you study only 30 mothers and there is no maternal death, if you make a conclusion that in India we don't have a maternal mortality ratio, it's a wrong information. And besides that, sample size has different drawbacks. If the sample size is very large, it can create problems. If the sample size is very small, then also it can create problems. So it is a responsibility of the statistician to give the appropriate sample size required for the study. And the last, it is actually what are the analysis which is suitable for this study. So it is a statistician's responsibility. What is your objective of the study, and what is the most appropriate analysis which you have to use for your study. Anyway, this is one part of it only. But let us go back to a historical perspective, how the subject came into this well. Long time back, if you see the world history of medical research, there is no statistical involvement. One example, if you look into James Lind, what he has done is he did some research on scurvy. 12 patients, 2 patients were given lemons and oranges. And he has found that these 2 patients recovered from the signs and symptoms. So he concluded that the scurvy may be due to the vitamin C deficiency. But is it a valid research? And he also concluded that fruits can cure the scurvy. But the fact is that there's no mistake, but it is not a statistically oriented study design. Out of the 12 people, only 2 people were given the oranges and they recovered from the disease. And he concluded it like that way. Okay, we can't question James Lind, he's a great physician only, but this is the way which he has concluded his study. Later, even Edward Jenner also, he didn't have any statistical knowledge, but he developed the concept of the vaccination. If you go to read the Google, how Edward Jenner developed the concept of the vaccination, there's no statistical study designs. But just like our principles are just 5 minutes before mentioned, today's COVID epidemic, people are all concerned about the statistics. COVID vaccine, is it effective or not? Is it effective for recurrence or is it effective for the side effects? People are so much concerned about the vaccination. But the trial is in the phase 3 trials or a phase 2 trials. People's general awareness itself has grown up. But Edward Jenner, when he developed the vaccination, he didn't have any knowledge in the subject of statistics. Without statistics, he developed the concept of the vaccination. The story applicable to the Louis Pasteur also. He's a very famous microbiologist. And he developed the rabies vaccine. Even small classes we studied how the Louis Pasteur developed the rabies vaccine. The mother came with the child. That story is well known. Even the school classes we have the 5th standard or something like that, we have studied the story. But Louis Pasteur doesn't have any statistical, he didn't do any statistical study designs in developing the rabies vaccine. So historically, we have an error. Same story for the Marie Curie also. Marie Curie discovered the radium. And she has not applied any statistical study designs to discover the radium. It is just like accidental research, she found out the radium. So when you look back the world history, there is an error with the medical findings without the application, without a single application of the statistics. There are many medical research, they have done it, and it was very famous also. There's no second opinion on that thing. But the story slightly changed from the year of 1700 to 1827, which is actually what we call as modern epidemiology. And especially, there's a physician called Daniel Bernoulli. A physician, his Bernoulli family is a very famous physician family in the Britain. So he also, after graduating medical, he became the physician. At the same time, he's also having deep interest in the statistics. And he developed the first life table to present the mortality experience of a population with a single cause of death due to smallpox. And parallelly, he was serving as the This is the first milestone in the field of medical research. A medicine physician, he taking over the charge of the statistics and developing a concept called a life table. And parallelly, during that time, 1834, Royal Statistical Society was established, and 1850, London Epidemiological Society was established. Then his student was Alexander Lewis. and he was very much influenced by his teacher. See, this is a very interesting to see how the teacher-student relationship really works in the world history. And Alexander Lewis lived in the year 1787 to 1872. And his primary concept is to develop the clinical description of the typhoid fever and tuberculosis. For that purpose, he developed a main branch of statistics today, which we are all familiar with this branch, numerical methods and the numerical analysis. And he is having two bright students. Their names are and William Farr, he lived in the year 1807 to 1883, and he was very much influenced by his teacher, Alexander Lewis. And that is a time which a cholera epidemic came in the year of 1849 near the river of Thames. And he has two students are there. One is the famous Florence Nightingale. Many of you know her as a nurse, but Florence Nightingale is a famous statistician also. And Francis Galton, they were the students of William Farr. I just tell you what William Farr's major contribution. There are so many people who are dying due to the cholera. Even microbiology people do not know how this cholera epidemic is taking place. Then he found that, let me take the data. There are two water companies were operating in the Thames River. One is Southwark Water Company and other is called a Lambeth Company. And the Southwark Water Company was situated more in a contaminated area, whereas Lambeth Company, that water company, was situated less contaminated area. So what the first work of the William Farr was, he took the statistics, how many houses having the water supply of the Southwark companies and how many houses having the water supply of the Lambeth Company and how many people died due to the cholera. Don't mention the name cholera. How many people died? It is just for making you understand, I added the word. He didn't mention the name cholera. And he found that, then he did a ratio, the deaths by the number of houses. Accordingly, he showed that deaths in 10,000 houses is 315 for the Southwark Company, whereas Lambeth Company is 37 per 1,000. And actually, he did a comparison of these two also. Today, we have chi-square test is used to compare these two proportions. But what he at that time suggested is, this death may be due to the poor contamination of the water. What we are proud about in this finding is, later only microbiology department found out that this disease is actually what is called cholera, and they have the explanations of how the cholera epidemic, they have epidemiology, what are the agent factor, host factor, environmental factors, everything in microbiology department they are covering. But we are proud about it. Before microbiology department saying that this is cholera, these statisticians, William Farr, the statistician, was the first person who told that this cholera may be due to the poor contamination of the water based on this finding. And he also made some important contribution in the research. First, he developed a concept called a person years. What his observation is, a year of life is the lifetime unit. That means one person living through a year is equivalent to two persons living through half a year. Those who study statistics, in many of the rates, person years is the denominator today. And this concept was originally developed by the person, it was by the William Farr. And he also did, another interesting part of it is, there is a possibility of converting death rate into probability of dying. Even when I was doing my PhD also, I have done a good contribution in demography. There are so many formulas are there today to convert death rate into probability of dying. In statistical terminology, if I am correct, if I'm not, now my touch with the demography is not much, but still if I am correct, NMX, how to convert it into small lx, this conversion formula. And he was the first person who developed, who earlier suggested that there can be a relationship between the death rate and the probability of dying. And he also suggested that there's a term called the dose response effect. Basically, when the intensity of the exposure increases, there's a chance of the outcome also follows a dose-response relationship. For example, a mother coming with an antenatal checkup, the overweight can be classified as normal, overweight, and obese. The outcome can be maternal, some abnormal drop defects or something like that. In some cause, which of the maternal related cause we can see. And we can also measure the intensity of the exposure from this relationship. For example, compared to normal, what is the risk of an overweight mother to give preterm birth? Or compared to the normal, what is the risk of an obese mother to give a preterm birth? So there is a possibility of establishing a dose-response effect. This was originally suggested by William Farr. And he is the first person who again suggested the herd immunity. That he is told that the smallpox can be arrested by vaccination, which protected a part of the population. Today, this term is very familiar. After COVID epidemic came, our massive vaccination coverage and the prevalence is also very high. So with this, other people can also, those who didn't get the COVID can also now get protected. That's the term actually what we call it as herd immunity. And William Farr also gave one more important foundation in the field of medicine. He told that prevalence can be calculated based on incidence into the duration of the disease. In estimating the prevalence of a disease, two things must be distinctly considered: the relative frequency of their attacks and the relative proportion of sick time they produce. And as I told you, his students were, one is Florence Nightingale. I don't have the time to explain the Florence Nightingale's full contribution. If I am correct, our KK Sir has prepared a good manuscript on Florence Nightingale's contribution in the field of statistics, and Sir is trying to publish it in one of the statistical journals. Once it gets published, I will send it to you, all of it. I got an opportunity to go through his man. He asked me to do some editing and corrections. I go through his paper. It's a wonderful paper which will get likely to publish. The Florence Nightingale's contribution in the field of statistics. Florence Nightingale was one of the students of William Farr. And William Augustine Guy is also one of his students, which he lived in the year 1810 to 1805. William Augustine Guy became professor of forensic medicine and dean of King's College of Hospital Medical School, and his primary interest is effects of different occupation and social class on mortality. And he did a good paper on the value of numerical methods in physiology and medicine. And later, Francis Galton was the student of William Farr. See, you should remember, are we developing this chain? One professor, his student, his student, his student, and his student. Now, the Francis Galton was a student of William Farr. And Francis Galton, he lived in the year 1822 to 1911. He gave three important contributions. The first is he developed the concept of standard deviation. Second thing, he is the first person who suggested the concept of regression to the mean. And he also gave some ideas of how to prepare a questionnaire survey, how to check the validity and reliability of a survey. And his student was Carl Pearson. And Carl Pearson, most of you are well known his name. He lived in the year of 1857 to 1936. And he was the one who developed the correlation coefficient. Suppose if you wanted to see the correlation of, for example, age increases, weight of the child increases or not. This can be measured through the term which is called the correlation coefficient. And his famous student was Major Greenwood. And Major Greenwood was influenced by Carl Pearson, and Major Greenwood was the first professor of vital statistics and epidemiology at London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Why I wanted to highlight the Major Greenwood? He was the first, basically what we call it as professor of biostatistics. Ideally, his name was not given as professor of bio, was called as professor of vital statistics. But at the same time, his student Bradford Hill, he got the designation as the professor of biostatistics. Today, years are crossing. Now in India, my professor, Dr. P.S.S. Sunnara was the first professor, and we have today around 30 to 40 professors are there in biostatistics in our country. Probably more than that, 40 to 50 biostatistical professors are there in our country itself. And Bradford Hills, I don't want to give any elaborate his papers on this. For the social research scientist, he has mentioned that how to write a paper is one famous slide I wanted to highlight to you. What he has mentioned is, when you write introduction, you have to answer only one question. Why did you start the study? So you can write everything, whatever you wanted in the introduction. Finally, you yourself should ask this question. This introduction is the answer to only one question. Why did you start this study? Similarly, in the paper, material and methods, it has to answer only one question. The question is, what did you do in this study? Similarly, in the results, you have to answer only one question. What did you find in this study? And similarly, while you write the discussion, you have to answer only one question. What does it mean? And he also, let us say, each question, introduction carries 25 marks, and methods carries 25 marks, results carries 25 marks, and discussion carries 25 marks. If a mark is more than 90, you can easily get published in PubMed indexed with a good impact factor 4 or 5 journals. You can easily publish. But the secret formula is asked to answer only these questions. But you have to make sure that are we answering this question? Introduction, why did you start this study? And methods, what did you do in this study? And results, what did you find in this study? And discussion, what does it mean to others? And later in 1930, we call it as era of more statistical involvement. Especially that is the time which previous till 1930, we were focusing only the communicable disease or infectious disease. That is why this life table and all other things were very important at that time. But after 1930, the non-communicable disease came as the one important concern. Chronic disease came into the picture. So when the non-communicable disease like cancer, diabetes, coronary heart disease, all these things when it came, the research scope of the statisticians has tremendously increased, because all of them would like to know what are the risk factors, and it is in the hands of a statistician. Suppose if you wanted to know what are the factors associated with the coronary heart disease, what are the factors associated with the diabetes, what are the factors associated with the lung cancer, what are the factors associated with the night blindness, any type of this type of a study, if you wanted to answer it, it has to undergo a thorough statistical. There are two ways, as I told you. One is the study design. Whether we have so many studies, which I will explain you a little later, we have so many study designs are there. And which is the most appropriate study design which you are going to select to answer this question? That's the first part of it. And second part of it, what is the most appropriate statistical analysis suitable for it? Especially, basically, we are looking the concept like multivariate analysis. That is our primary concern. Out of the various factors, maybe 10 factors or 20 factors or 30 factors, which are the factors really significant to this outcome variable? Coronary heart, we may be selecting around 50 factors, but out of the 50 factors, which are the factors significantly associated with the corona? What we call it as a multivariate analysis. Of course, the analysis suitable for this particular study may be a logistic regression analysis, because the outcome variable has only two components. One is yes or no. If you are doing a case control study, you will have 100 or 150 cases, 150 controls. The outcome variable, when you are having a 1 or 0, the most suitable analysis for this type of studies is multiple logistic regression analysis. During that time is what is around slowly this chi-square test and logistic regression analysis and became later popular after this modern epidemiology. So now when you wanted to do a research, what are the things which you have to keep it in the mind? What is the smallest research a person can do is a case study. That means one patient alone we are taking and explaining all his issues, which is in medical literature, we call it as case study. There's a second research, which is the lowest research, because in many journals, some journals, one session is there for the case series, but university examination, theory papers, and they will say that case study will not be accepted as a paper. Like that way, we have instructions are there. And second research is actually what we call it as case series. There's a branch actually developed in the medicine which is called clinical epidemiology. That means basically in the long time back, we call a doctor as an experienced doctor. You should go a senior doctor. So what is the senior doctor do? Or what is the meaning of you should consult with an experienced doctor? The meaning is that the experienced doctor has treated so many patients. He must have treated 150 patients or 200 patients. So that 250 patients history he has already storing, brain is already storing it. And when the patient comes for him for a diagnosis, he uses this information. And based on this, brain is actually doing this work actually. And based on the brain analyzing all the information, from that he gets this is the appropriate diagnosis. This is actually what we call it as case series analysis. And later, now they developed it as a branch of medicine or a branch of science, actually what we call it as clinical epidemiology. Like, or if I am right or wrong, I don't know. Olden days, we don't have rules and regulations for the music. It is a talent actually. Now it is not a talent alone. You have to study music. You have to go for the music class, music colleges you have to go, or professionally you have to get trained in the science of music. Then only you can become a playback singer or something like that way. So case series also, long time back the doctor just like analyzing. Now it is not possible. They have to undergo biostatistics and clinical epidemiology training. Two, which where I used to, I am a good expert in this particular field, how to do clinical epidemiology training. That means doctors' past history, how it can be used to get a new diagnosis for it when the patient comes. And we have third study is actually the commonest study which most of the social science researchers and statisticians do, which is called cross-sectional studies. Cross-sectional study means it's a one point of time, and many people will confuse with the word time. Remember, please, you can do a cross-sectional study in 1 month time. You can visit one house 10 times also. That is also cross-sectional study only. But only one thing what you have to keep it in the mind is one particular information, only one time you should collect it. For example, what is your socio-economic status? What is your weight? You can't collect the weight 2 times. Only one time you are permitted to collect. This study design is actually what we call it as cross-sectional study. Whereas most of the doctors in the operation theatre, what they will do is before surgery, during surgery, 1 minute after surgery, 2 minutes after surgery, 3 minutes after surgery, 5 minutes after surgery, they will collect the pain score and various components. This is not a cross-sectional study. Though the whole time is only 1 hour time, but that is not a cross-sectional study because same variable they are collecting several times. We call it as repeated data analysis study or longitudinal data analysis study. But cross-sectional study, only one time we should collect the data. And third study design is called a case control study. Anything based on the cases alone, we can't make conclusions. For example, 100 COVID people, they were saying that they are non-vegetarians. Doesn't mean that non-vegetarian can cause to COVID. They should also study non-COVID cases. How many of them are non-vegetarians or how many of them are vegetarians? So this study design is actually what we call it as case control study. We have a better study design which is called a cohort study. In cohort study, it's the follow. The two group of people, for example, smoking and lung cancer, if you wanted to know the association, we have two group of people. One is smokers, other is non-smokers. And both of the group of people, you have to follow them for some long period of time and see how many of them are developing the lung cancer in the smokers and how many of them are developing the lung cancer in the non-smokers. This is actually what we call it as cohort study. And randomized control studies is more valid, especially when you do a vaccine trials and other things. We have to randomly allocating. The allocation of the randomization makes the baseline characteristics comparable. So that's the main advantage of the randomized control trials. Now, how to analyze this type of data? If a case series are there, for example, the doctor has treated 5 patients and their length of stay is 1, 3, 2, 4, 5. The doctor can calculate what is the mean length of stay. It may be 3 and median is 3. So next patient comes, doctor, I wanted to undergo the same surgery. How many days I have to stay? The doctor can give an answer from his past history that he has treated 5 patients. On an average, they are staying 3 days. So he can tell that 3 days is the mean length of stay. So remember, please, there's also just one concept which you may be knowing that in medical research, we should also worry about the distribution, how it looks. God has given various variables with certain properties. For example, diastolic blood pressure. Diastolic blood pressure, the mean value is greater than the median value, and the median value is greater than the mode value. This distribution is actually called a positively skewed distribution. There are certain variables like height, weight, and all. It is not my thing. God has given it. The mean value is approximately equal to the median value, and the median value is approximately equal to the mode value. This is actually what we call it as normal distribution. And there are many other biological variables like serum albumin level and all. Mean value less than the median value and median value less than the mode value. This is actually called a negatively skewed distributions. I just would like to know why we are concerned about, of course, in statistics, we are also studying it. But how many people are really thinking about why we should study the distribution? Why we should know normal distribution is a repeated essay, maybe the statistics students. Mean is equal to median is equal to mode. Mean plus or minus 2 standard deviation is 95% of the observations in that region. But what is its relevance actually? This is the one thing which is, especially in the medical field, you will be knowing. When you go to the biochemistry department lab and when you give it, remember please, today's whole world of classifications, whole world of diagnosis, we have only 2 ways which you can diagnose in a hospital. When you go as a patient, what doctor will do is either he will ask you to take his X-ray or ECG. This is one way of doing it. And second way of doing it is actually only to the biochemical parameters, which is controlling the medical literature. Each of these parameters, they will give you, this is the normal limits. And if your value is above this or below this, you are not normal. Now the question for you is, how we are deciding the normality? This itself, I have taken more than a 1 week classes I have given on this particular topic. How to define normality? There are 3-4 approaches are there. In that, a very common approach is actually what we call it as normal distribution theory. But there are a lot of objections are there for the normal distribution theory. Normal distribution theory, what does it say is, when the observations are normally distributed, mean plus or minus 2 standard deviation, it contains 95% of the observation. So what we call it as remaining 2.5% in the right and 2.5% of observations in the left, we call it as abnormal values. But there are a lot of criticism are there. Is it correct or wrong? I don't know. I have seen so many debates. For example, one person asked me, sir, when I went to a class of 100 students, 95% students cut the class and went to the movie and the students who are sitting in that class, that 5 students, they are the normal, or students who cut the class and went to the fun mall for seeing the movie, 90, they are the normal. I can't give an answer for this type of questions. So just like 95% behavior behaves like this way, can we call it as a normal or not? There's arguments are there. Parallelly, there's one famous saying is that science never believes in democracy. These are all the criticism against the normal distribution. That means even science, it believes only truth only. Even 95% value shows like this way doesn't mean that it is the science. This type of arguments are there. A lot of criticism are there, normal distribution theory. But anyway, this distribution is very important, especially how to see the shape of how the 95% observations lie in that range. And case series, like the famous way of doing the analysis is frequency distribution table. We can make frequency and see the relative frequency also. The relative frequency is the first simplest probability. For example, this RBC values of 35 people I am telling. Tomorrow a patient coming with so the doctor himself can judge from this finding. What is the probability of a person with this particular condition having an RBC value 5.95 or around 6? The answer is it is 2.9% only from this information, because 0.029 is the relative frequency. So this type of a table, frequency distribution table, can give valuable conclusion on the case series analysis. And whenever you prepare a table, there should be some rules are there. One is table should be numbered. This also depending upon the journal. International journals like Arabic numerals, or Indian journals like numeric, this Indian Roman numerals, which each journal has its own properties are there. You have to refer it, what type of a numbering system the journal prefers it. Accordingly, you have to write it. And table should have a very clear title, and title should be self-explanatory. I mean, table should not be too long. Abbreviations has to be explained and unit of measurement to be mentioned. So, which is already I have mentioned these things. And we have the cross-sectional studies. What we are worried about, the prevalence is the main concern. Now it is very easy for you to understand the prevalence of COVID. What is the prevalence of COVID? And you can make some small comparisons with the cross-sectional studies, but that is not very valid. And this is a flow chart of the cohort study, which I already explained you. We have 2 groups, smoking and lung cancer example only I'm telling you. And how many of them are developing lung cancer? How many of them are not developing lung cancer in each group? And this type of 2% you will get it. And if you wanted to compare these 2 percentages, there's 2 statistical tests are available. One is called a proportion test. Other is actually what we call it as chi-square test. You can use any of these statistical tests. And we have indicators called relative risk, which will tell you the strength of the associations. And as I told you, we have case control studies. And case control studies also, there's an indicator called odds ratio. Here also the statistical test which can be used is chi-square test, because the rate of exposure in the 2 groups can be compared using the chi-square test. And basically, most of the researchers place an inferential process also, which there are 2 components are there. First is called the estimation part of it, and other is called the testing of hypothesis part of it. And it is not possible to calculate the population parameter directly. The value of the parameter is estimated by the corresponding sample. The value of the sample statistics varies from sample to sample, which is actually the standard error. Based on it, the confidence interval is estimated. Just to tell an example for the beginners, suppose we wanted to estimate the actual population mean. Our value is, what is the cholesterol value of a myocardial infarction patient? It's a cardiologist. I am sure that some of your statisticians have studied this confidence interval, the formulas and other things. But I just wanted to explain you in the research form where it is relevant. Just imagine a cardiologist. He knows that the more cholesterol values are there, the likely to get myocardial infarction. So what is the cholesterol value with the patient MI? So he has selected 200 people and the mean cholesterol value is 260. And he wanted to keep it as a range, that which is the lower value and which is the upper value. This range is actually what we call it as confidence interval of the mean value. The range is called a confidence interval of the mean value. The formula you will be knowing about it, x bar plus or minus z alpha into SD by root n is the formula for it. Same thing for the confidence interval for the prevalence. Out of 100 people, when we did RT-PCR testing, 90 people were having COVID. So what is the prevalence of COVID in the country? Out of 100 people, 70 were anemic. What is the prevalence? We need a lower value and the upper value of the prevalence. This lower value and upper value is actually what we call it as confidence interval of the proportion. The formula may be well known for you. The prevalence plus or minus Z alpha value. One for the 95% confidence interval 1.96 and 99% confidence interval is 2.576 into root of PQ divided by N. That is the formula for it. This is called a confidence interval of the proportion. And third thing is actually the concept of the test of hypothesis. With this, I am going to conclude my slide. What is this hypothesis? This is also part of BSc statistics, testing of hypothesis. So many things we will be learning. But what is the relevance of it in a research point of view? What is the relevance? Let us have a drug A was given to 50 patients. Drug B was given to another 50 patients. An average serum cholesterol level is lower in those receiving drug B than drug A at the end. Now the question is, what is the conclusion? Immediately what we say is that drug B is superior to drug A. But what statisticians will tell you is, this is only one possibility only. Drug B is superior to drug A. We have other three more possibilities are there. The second possibility is drug B is not superior to drug A. The difference may be just by chance. So this is the second possibility. And third possibility is it is not due to the drug but uncontrolled differences other than the treatment between the sample of men receiving drug A and drug B account for the difference. And the last possibility is drug A may have selectively administered to the patients whose serum cholesterol levels were more refractory to the drug therapy. Basically, when you see two groups of any study, there's a difference. It can be attributed to three possibilities. One is called random chance, other is called biased comparison, and the last is called uncontrolled confounding variables. So the entire test of significance will address to the first part. Whether the observed difference is due to the random chance or not due to the random chance. As I told you, we have so many tests are there, hundreds or 200 tests are there, T-test, Z-test, chi-square test, ANOVA analysis of variance, we have F-value, and correlation coefficient. We have all values are there. From that, we can calculate the p-value. And this p-value will tell that the observed difference is due to the random chance or not. Usually we write a terminology called a p less than 0.05 means the probability that the difference is due to the random chance is less than 5%. P-value less than 0.01 means the probability that the difference is due to the random chance is less than 1%. And the other two things we may have to consider based on the random allocation and the randomization. If you do it, it will tell you things. And we have some statistical tests are there, which are elementary statistical tests, which you have to remember is T-test, which may be used to compare the two mean values. And we have analysis of variance. These are the very commonly used statistical tests in the literature, which will be used to compare the more than two mean values. And chi-square test is used to compare two proportions, and correlation coefficient is the correlation. These are the essential things which you have to remember in this class. I don't want to explain you much of the things. And this is what the institute which I belong to, previously Institute of Medical Sciences and Research. And finally, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. That was quite informative talk.
Finished in the right time. I have finished in the right time.
Yes.
Now it's time for clearing your doubts. If you have any doubts, if you have any queries, please ask or put it in the chat box.
ഓക്കെ, ആർക്കെങ്കിലും സംശയങ്ങൾ ചോദിക്കാം, അതല്ലെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സിൽ ടൈപ്പ് ചെയ്തിടാം.
ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സിൽ ടൈപ്പ് ചെയ്ത് ഒന്ന് വായിക്കണേ സാറേ, ഒന്ന് വായിക്കണേ ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സ്.
സാർ, നമ്മുടെ മെഡിക്കൽ റിസർച്ചിലെ സാമ്പിൾ സൈസ് ഡിറ്റർമിനേഷൻ മെത്തേഡ്സിനെ കുറിച്ചൊന്ന് ചെറുതായിട്ടൊന്ന് പറയാമോ? ഐ മീൻ എങ്ങനെയൊക്കെയാണെന്നുള്ളത്.
ഈ സാമ്പിൾ സൈസ് ഡിറ്റർമിനേഷൻ പറഞ്ഞാൽ അത് ഒരു സിമ്പിൾ വേ പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഈ ഒരു ടേബിളാണ്, നമ്മളെല്ലാം പഠിക്കുന്ന ടേബിൾ തന്നെയാണ് ഈ യഥാർത്ഥ സത്യം.
Sir, excuse me. Sir, please, what is that? Explain in English. I think somebody wants to explain it.
Okay. The sample size determination, if you ask me the question, there are two ways which we have to answer this question. The first is actually called a minimum sample size requirement. Second thing is oversampling problems. These two things I will explain you separately. The minimum sample size is actually which we can view this famous table, which is well known to most of you, but many people may not have looked in this angle. The whole test of significance, as I told you, what we will do is we can either accept the null hypothesis or reject the null hypothesis. When in the reality, the null hypothesis may be true or in the false. Based on that thing, we can see a 2x2 table. When you accept the null hypothesis, but the reality, the null hypothesis is true, it is a correct decision. When you reject the null hypothesis, when it is false, it is also a correct decision. The other two things are actually what we call it as errors. The first error is type 1 error. In medical research, what is the meaning of type 1 error is, yes, we are concluding that there is a difference between the two treatments. That means rejecting the hypothesis. But there is an error associated with these things. Basically, this error is actually what we call, probability of this type 1 error is actually what we call it as alpha. And in the reality, I agree that pure statistics university professor will not accept my logic, but we practical statisticians, this alpha is actually what we call it as p-value. I agree that there is some difference in the perception, but forget about it. This alpha is actually what we call it as p-value, p less than 0.05. P less than 0.05 is the error associated with this conclusion when we reject the null hypothesis, or the error associated with this conclusion when we reject the null hypothesis. That means there is a significant difference between the two treatments. The p-value is actually 0.01. That's error. This is actually alpha, or what we call it as p-value. But there is one more part which you have to consider, the other part of this error, which is called a type 2 error. Remember, please, one drug company has spent millions of rupees to develop a drug, and you are saying that there is no difference between this new drug and the existing drug. That means it's a shocking news for the manufacturer company or drug company. He may get heart attack because he has spent crores of rupees. And you are saying that there is no difference. Accepting the null hypothesis means there is no difference between these two treatments. At that time, we should look this factor into more microscopically. What are the possible ways? One is, yes, what we are telling is correct. There is no difference between the two treatments. There's one more possibility is there. It can be due to the term which is called a type 2 error, or probability of this type 2 error is actually what we call it as beta. So conventionally what we will tell, after doing the study, and when we reject it, don't cry it is due to the poor sample. And this type 2 error can happen only due to the poor sample size. So what we will tell you is, when you do a clinical trial, you consult a statistician, and usually the statistician fixes the type 2 error as either 10% or 20%. In a way, what we call it is the beta, the power of the study as 90% or 80%, and he calculated it. So that at the end you don't have to cry it that it is due to the insufficient sample size. So this is actually one way of seeing the sample size calculation. That means minimum sample size. If the sample size is not minimum, there is a chance that you may not get statistically significant result. That is the first part of it. There is another part of it actually called the oversampling in the clinical research. This oversampling, I don't know, many of you may be remembering the formula. The t-test, if you see this formula, how many people can recollect the formula, I don't know. The formula which we are teaching is x1 bar minus x2 bar, that is the numerator of it. And the denominator of it is called SD into root of 1 by n1 plus 1 by n2. So basically what it tells is, those who know mathematics will get, the higher value of t you will get it only when x1 bar minus x2 bar is high. That is one possibility. And second possibility is, if n1 and n2 are very high, then also if x1 bar and x2 bar are very low, then also you will get a higher t value, which is wrong actually. So basically most of the clinical drug people will say they may not have the x1 bar minus x2 bar may not be as high, but they will ask you to get n1 and n2 are very large. So this is wrong actually. This is actually what we call it as oversampling. So statistician's job is to get the correct sample size.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. And I request all the participants to kindly fill the feedback form which shared in the comment box. Thank you.
Okay, sir, I have one query regarding, this is general. We know that nowadays we are seeing that the data science discipline is emerging one. Okay, being a biostatistician, what is the linkage between data science and biostatistics? Can you say?
Data science and biostatistics link actually, if you ask my question, but my own institution, my own college, I studied graduation. Last week there are two departments are there. One is statistics department, another is called the data science department. Like as we told, when subjects are emerging, we have to give, when the experts are the data science, Marthoma College, I have studied, now they have two separate departments are there. One is statistics department, one is called a data science department. Data science is running the course. Last 2 months back, they asked me to conduct a 2-day workshop, and many people from the Pondicherry University, we have so many experts are there in the Pondicherry University, which is in data science. We all joined together and conducted the workshop. Of course, originally these are all part of the statistics only, but when the subject emerges and the person is data sciences with large data, how to summarize it, all experts are there. We have to give preference to it. So even Manipal University, originally Sri Kumar Nair started as the Department of Biostatistics. Now they changed it as Department of Data Science. Even one of the ISMS conference last time, we have a half an hour session for this particular talk alone. Data science, can it replace biostatistics or sciences? But anyway, I don't want to put much arguments on this topic. But everything is a specialized subjects. That's all which I can tell about.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, any queries? If anyone have any queries, please feel free to comment, or you can unmute your mic yourself and ask the questions. Otherwise, we can wind up the session, right? Sajid sir?
Sure, sir. Anushree, please.
Anushree, please.
Okay, sir. No duty is more urgent than that of returning thanks. With this note, I would like to invite Mr. Resin Aras, Assistant Professor of Department of Statistics, for delivering vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. First of all, a very good evening to all. It gives me an immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks for this evening even to the all dignitaries assembled over here. I would like to thank our chief guest who honored this function with his inventional thoughts with us. Dr. Anil sir is a friend of mine, and we together delivered more than 2 seminars, I think so. Am I right, sir?
Yes.
Okay. It's a very thank you, sir, for joining and accepting our invitation within the short time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I would like to thank our beloved principal, staff members, students, participants, and last but not least, our beloved audience, making this function as grand success. Once again, I thank one and all present over here. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.